Hey guys, Troy Francis coming at you from Riga in Latvia, and I wanted to talk today about alcohol and not drinking and why it's not necessary to drink if you don't want to, or if it's better for you not to, and why it can actually improve your dating life. Because this is something that gets asked of me quite a lot, because people who watch the channel, who've read my stuff, who've heard me talk about this in the past, will know that I don't drink alcohol. And I just recently celebrated 21 years of being sober from alcohol and also other substances as well, other drugs as well. So 21 years of sobriety, guys, at the end of March. You heard it here first. Congratulations to me. But it isn't really. I had a lot of help along the way. And yeah, 21 years, couple of decades of not drinking, except for Diet Coke, Donald Trump's favorite Diet Coke, the drink of kings and presidents, but not drinking any alcohol. Okay, so people will often ask things like, okay, so, what do you do on a date? What do you do when you meet a girl at the club, etc., etc. So there's all of that side of things connected with it. But then people are also interested sometimes in, well, how do I know if I'm drinking too much? Should I cut down? What about the situation I'm in? What does that mean? Does that mean I'm addicted to alcohol, or am I just a heavy drinker, etc., etc.? So I thought it might be helpful for people if I just sort of reflected on it a little bit, now that I have come of age as a non-drinker, as it were. So for me, drinking was always very addictive from the outset. So I basically started drinking, actually in the UK fairly late, in my teens, in my later teens. A lot of people I meet in recovery circles will say that they started first drinking when they were quite young, sort of 13 or something. For me, it was later than that, although I did have the odd sip here and there. I remember my grandfather giving me a little nip of brandy when I was quite young, and maybe a couple of sips of wine or something from my parents after that. But I started to drink properly when I was in my late teens, sort of 18, 17, 18 kind of time. And right from the beginning, it was clear that all I wanted to do, as far as alcohol was concerned, was to get hammered. I wanted to reach a stage of oblivion, ultimately. Now, I quite liked the buzz of it. I quite liked the bit at the beginning when you feel that nice warm buzz. You start to talk more. It starts to unlock different ideas in your mind. You start to feel sort of very social and creative all of a sudden. I had always been somebody who was very introspective and introverted. I'd always liked my own company. I found it quite difficult to relate to other people. And alcohol sort of blew the doors off of that, really, as it does for many people. I mean, that's why a lot of people drink, ultimately, because it sort of opens you up. It takes away your inhibitions. And I found it did that for me. But what I liked even more than that initial part was the fact that it would ultimately send me to sleep, but it would take me out of my head, And when you go into recovery, into a rehab or recovery meetings after that, if you do that, what you'll find is a lot of people say the same thing. They wanted to turn off the voice in their head. They wanted to get away from themselves, and that's how it was for me, because I went through a lot of self-loathing, a lot of dislike of myself as a person. I didn't particularly like living in my head, the way that I thought about things, the way that I thought about life, my paranoia, my circular thinking around different issues that were going on. Alcohol came along and was a relief from all of that for a period of time. It solved a problem for a period of time. The problem of being me, the problem of being Troy Francis. Alcohol was able to help me with that. And it helped quite effectively until it stopped working, or until the consequences of drinking started to get worse and worse and worse. So I suppose for anybody who's watching this, who's thinking, well, do I have an issue with drink? I don't really know, blah, blah, blah. I want to try and break it down as clearly as I can. I used to hang out with a lot of people who were heavy drinkers. I went to university in Manchester in the UK. It was a big party city. That it was at the height of the house music, clubbing sort of explosion that was going on in Britain at that time. So there was a lot of alcohol, but there was also a lot of other party drugs, ecstasy, cocaine, amphetamines, acid, just different things going on at the same time, as well as obviously the harder stuff, heroin and so on, crack. And so for me, it was like I got the keys to the kingdom, because suddenly there was this, I wasn't living at home anymore with my parents. I could do whatever the hell I wanted to do. And what ended up happening was that I was intoxicated pretty much the whole time, right? And that is the key difference, right? Because in that period, I used to hang around with a lot of people who were heavy drinkers, and even people who would drink probably more than me, you know, because I was in many ways a bit of a lightweight. You know, I couldn't have too many drinks before I would get very chaotic. You know, my behavior would get very sort of, I was very all over the place, you know, and doing embarrassing things, getting into embarrassing situations, getting into sometimes potentially violent situations, or situations that I shouldn't have been in because of alcohol, because I was just, you know, I didn't know what I was doing. Now, there were other people who were able to drink a lot, and they were much more controlled than that, okay? So they could sort of get away with it more. But here's the key difference. So, say, for example, a very good friend of mine, Adam, at the time, very heavy drinker. We used to go out and party together the whole time. But whereas after we'd been out on a Saturday night and we'd really hit it hard, we'd had, you know, whatever, I say amazing time, you know, we'd had a shambolic time. He'd had to carry me back in the in a taxi or whatever. The next day, Adam would say, "Oh God, that was such a heavy night last night. I'm going to leave it tonight because, you know, I just need to recover. I need to get my head back together because I've got work tomorrow, whatever." I never had that off switch. So I would wake up the next day having drunk the same, or maybe even a bit less than, say, Adam had. And the next morning, I'm like, right, all I want to do is carry on. Okay? And as you probably know, if you drink, the best way to cure a hangover is to drink more alcohol, because a hangover really is withdrawal from alcohol. And so when you drink more, you put more alcohol on top of it, it relieves those feelings, because you're getting what your body was craving. You know, that you were withdrawing from the alcohol, now you've got more alcohol, great, okay, you don't feel those negative feelings anymore. Of course, the problem with that as a strategy is that you've got to come down at some point, right? And when you do hit the ground, it's going to be pretty painful. And the longer you keep the binge going, the more painful that crash is going to be. Now, some people successfully keep it going for 30 or 40 years before they finally sober up. And I say successfully, I mean, obviously they jeopardize their health, they jeopardize their relationships, they jeopardize their careers and everything else, but they somehow manage to sort of keep the plate spinning over a long period of time before finally they crash and they're like, you know, something happens and they have to stop, they have to give up. But that was the key difference for me, I suppose, between somebody who I would regard as a heavy drinker versus somebody who is an alcoholic, somebody who is addicted to alcohol. I never had an off switch at all, okay? And really, on say a night out, the only reason I would stop drinking would be because I would fall unconscious and black out and literally not, you know, I'd literally be unconscious. I wouldn't be able to drink anymore. So that's the only point at which I would stop. And then when I woke up the next day, I would want to carry on. Now, I didn't drink every morning, but I would certainly drink, you know, mornings when I knew I could get away with it, I would certainly drink. I remember one time after a club, being out with a friend of mine, and we went to the local McDonald's, classy, and he had a bottle of Jack Daniels with him, and this was breakfast time. People were there having their, you know, McDonald's Happy Meal breakfast, whatever. And I was pouring Jack Daniels into the Coke and drinking that, and it was like, yes, great, off to the races again. You know, smoking as well, and you know, doing any other drug that would come my way. And the reason for that, as I said, was because I didn't like reality very much. You know, I didn't like the reality of existing in my own mind, in my own persona, very much. It was life was too difficult for me to handle straight. So I needed a little bit of something to take the edge off it. And that's what alcohol was for, and that's what drugs were for. So if you're identifying with any of this, if any of this kind of resonates with you, then it might be that you are operating in the same way. But the thing with our society is, and this has been the case for all of my life and probably time immemorial, really, is that drinking is very much part of the culture, certainly in Britain and in parts of America as well, and most of the Western world, really, and indeed the Eastern. You know, if you go to Eastern Europe, it's everyone's getting hammered the whole time. I mean, the party never ends. Okay, so it's very much ingrained in all of these cultures that drinking, and indeed drinking to excess, is a good thing, particularly if you're a guy, right? Because it's part of that masculinity, isn't it? It's like, yeah, come on, you know, drink. This is what we do. So you're not getting any voices that are discouraging you. If anything, the culture is telling you to drink more, to party more. Okay. Now that I think that might be changing a little bit now, actually, because people are more health conscious now, and I've seen some posts on Twitter from much younger people than me, Zoomers, saying, you know, I don't drink anymore because it's, you know, I'm on my grind and it's going to take me away from that, and etc. etc. So I think societal attitudes to this are changing a little bit slowly. There's also now a lot more non-alcoholic, fake alcoholic drinks on sale. So you can buy non-alcoholic gin, non-alcoholic vodka, as well as non-alcoholic beers and stuff like that. So I think it is slowly becoming more of a thing now that people are turning away from alcohol. But certainly for a very long time, it's been incredibly ingrained in the culture. And what that's meant is that people who have had a genuine problem with it, like I did, get sort of carried along and in some ways shielded from having to sort oneself out by the fact that there's all this partying going on around one. Now, when I was in Manchester and I was doing the bulk of my drinking, which took place mainly in Manchester, a little bit in London, some memorable occasions in places like New York and Ibiza and stuff as well, but generally in Manchester and London in the UK, I was going off the rails. You know, I was very clearly going off the rails, but I was surrounded by a lot of people who were heavy drinkers, but not really in the same way that I was. And they would also kind of enable me a bit because they wanted, you know, if you're somebody who likes a drink, who likes to party, the last thing you want is some boring ass buffoon hanging around who isn't drinking, you know, who isn't getting stuck in, because that drags your vibe down and it perhaps makes you think, well, maybe I should look at it then. Maybe I should look at my drinking. So I would have a lot of people around me who, even though I would get into ridiculous situations and kind of really embarrass myself and humiliate myself and bring humiliation on the group and get into all these dangerous and chaotic situations, even then, they'd still encourage me the next day. They'd be like, oh, come on, Troy, you can have another one, mate. You know, like, just be a bit more careful this time, you know? It was that kind of attitude. And so the culture itself kind of buoyed me along and encouraged me to keep going, even though clearly, really, if you took a rational look at it, you would say, look, you were overdoing it, you needed to stop, you needed to sort your life out, all right? And the same thing went for drugs as well, by the way. Now, this is also slightly self-selecting because you think about, well, okay, but who were the people that I was hanging around with? Who were the people I was spending time with? Well, obviously, I had selected a group of people to surround myself with who were also heavy drinkers, heavy users, whatever. And this is what the alcoholic will do. He will surround him or herself with people who are also have a similar predisposition. Some of whom might be bona fide alcoholics, some of whom may just be people who are heavy drinkers and they like to party. But you're going to surround yourself with people who have a similar sort of mindset to you. And as I said, you're going to shun people who, you know, who don't drink. And often, I will be in a meeting now, I'll be in a recovery meeting, and I'll hear somebody say something like, yeah, you know, I always used to be very suspicious of people who didn't drink. I'd always avoid them because I didn't want that energy in my life. And I was the same. You know. And then, you know, you come out the other end and you become the boring ass person who's not drinking, and that's a whole different story, you know. And you see it from the other side. So it was that compulsion that ultimately made me, or ultimately makes me, an alcoholic, because the relationship that I have with alcohol is still to this day is exactly the same, which is that once I start, I don't want to stop, and I also lose the ability to stop, because if you, what we all know what happens. You know, you have one drink, okay, that was quite nice. You have another one, and then after two or three, you hit the fuck it button, and well, in my case anyway, this is true. I just lose the willpower. I lose any ability to stop, and then I just carry on. I go into blackout, and then one thing leads to another, and you know, who knows where I'm going to end up, right? On the side of a motorway, or in some dodgy hotel somewhere, or whatever, right? So my drinking continued for about a decade, okay, and as I say, got into all kinds of scrapes, all kinds of dodgy situations, dangerous situations, really, situations that I should never have been in, okay, and it also got very mentally taxing. It was very frightening. It was very psychologically difficult to deal with, because on some level, even though there was a lot of denial, you know, I didn't walk around thinking, oh, I've got a drink problem. I just walked around thinking, well, I've got a life problem, and actually drinking makes me feel better and gives me something to look forward to. So it's actually, you know, a net positive. What I didn't realize at the time was a lot of the problems that I had were caused by the fact that I was drunk all the time, right? But anyway, so there was a lot of denial, but there would come points when what we would call rock bottoms, okay? So some things happened, some dodgy things happened, and you know, you wake up the next day and you're like, shit, did that really, like, how did I get into that situation? Did that really happen? And then there would be people around me, a few people around me, who would call me out and would say, well, look, I mean, come on, man, you need to sort yourself out. You need to have a look at this. And so I did try a few times to stop drinking, or at least to lay off for periods of time. And it was always very hard. You know, it was always very hard. I could maybe get a day or a couple of days, I'd sort of really white knuckle it, and I wouldn't drink. And then there would always be an excuse. Oh, you know, it's somebody's birthday, it's somebody's leaving do, it's Friday, it's my birthday, whatever it was. There'd always be that excuse to pick up a drink again and to get back on it. But the problem was that when I got back on it, then I would go into blackout, where I would lose all knowledge of what was happening, what I was doing, what was going on around me. And I would get into these dodgy situations. And I realized I had no control over that. It was literally like a Jekyll and Hyde situation, where as soon as I started drinking, all bets were off, really. I didn't know what was going to happen. It could be a relatively quiet night, or it could end up being a complete disaster, and I could wake up in a different city or even a different country, right? And mentally, as I say, that became incredibly difficult to deal with. I became very, very depressed. I became very anxious. I became very fearful, because I literally didn't know, I didn't have any self-accountability. I couldn't control, I couldn't say with any certainty that I could control my behavior when I was under the influence of this substance. But at the same time, I wasn't able to give it up totally, or the thought of giving it up totally was just a complete anathema to me. So finally, we get to what has been called the jumping off place, where you realize, well, I can't go any further with drinking. I can't go any further with taking this substance into my body, because this is just, it's just leading me down such a dark and destructive path. But at the same time, you can't imagine life without it either. And then you're really in trouble, okay? And then you reach this point of, they call it the gift of desperation, where you're just like, well, you know, what the hell do I do now? And I tried different things, like I tried counseling, I tried hypnotherapy, I tried, you know, self-help books. I mean, all different kinds of things, and none of it really worked. Then I found myself in a meeting. I found myself in a 12-step recovery meeting, okay? And all of a sudden, there were a bunch of different people in this room, different ages. There were women there, like older women there in their 70s, 60s, 70s. There were guys there, different backgrounds from me, different ethnicities, different, like, they come from different parts of the country or from different countries around the world. They were all talking about their experiences with alcohol. And their experiences with alcohol, every single one of them identified with what they were saying. Okay, I got what they were saying, right? They were describing their relationship with alcohol in the same way as my relationship with alcohol and drugs had been. And for the first time in my life, even having had many mates who were heavy drinkers and drug users, and also people in my own family and so on, for the first time in my life, I met a bunch of people who were describing their relationship with alcohol in the same way as mine, okay? And that was incredibly powerful for me. It was really one of the most powerful things that's happened to me in my entire life, was to sit in that meeting, in that room, and to have people talking about alcohol, their use of alcohol, their experience with alcohol, and it was exactly the same as mine, okay? Finally, I felt like there's some people out here who get it. You know, there's some people out there who get this stuff, and they appreciate it, they understand it. There might be hope here, there might be a way forward for me here. And these people were not drinking, right? And they were working a program based on the 12 steps of recovery, which was a program based in abstinence, all right, not drinking. Well, what a bummer that is. You know, that's not really what I wanted. I didn't want to stop entirely, really. I just wanted to find a way where I could drink and not have some of the consequences that I've been suffering. But what I was told was that it's the first drink that does the damage, because, you know, you have that first drink and one's too many, but 1,000's not enough. Okay, one's too many. One drink is too many. 1,000 then isn't enough. Okay, because as soon as I have that drink, as soon as I reignite that phenomenon of craving within me once again, then all bets are off. Because then it becomes almost impossible then for me to control. Certainly over a long enough timeline, it becomes impossible for me then to control. And bang, I'm off to the races once again. Okay? And this is why, for me, I found that abstinence was what I needed to do in order to stay sober. Okay? There's no point. I can't just be like, okay, well, I'll have the odd one here and there and fine, because it's just going to set me off again. It's going to set off that phenomenon of craving once more. And it's the same thing with other substances as well. You know, cocaine or party drugs as well. Exactly the same thing. Very, very toxic for me. And this is just the way that I'm built, and this is the way that addicts are built. Okay, so it's no point saying, well, what about willpower, or, you know, blah, 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 because if it was that easy, then nobody would ever have a drinking problem, because nobody wants to have some of the horrendous consequences that they get from drinking. Nobody actually wants those things in their life. You know, the broken marriages, the prison sentences, the illness, the loss of finance, you know, the loss of money, the disastrous stuff that happens, you know, the accidents, all that. Nobody really wants those things in their life. So if it was as easy as, we'll just have willpower, bro, then everyone would go, yeah, oh, willpower, oh, right, okay, yeah, all right, yeah, I'll stop then. You know, I mean, it's not that easy for a certain contingent of the population who have this particular predilection as far as alcohol is concerned. And for those people, they need to find something to put in the way of picking up that drink, okay? Because it's not enough. Yeah, you could do it for a couple of nights and say, right, yeah, lads, I'm not drinking, fine. But long term, what are you going to put in its place? Okay, what strategy do you have to build a life where you don't drink alcohol, but that's not part of your life? Okay, and that's what I had to figure out. And the thing that I found that worked for me is going to 12-step recovery meetings, having friends who attend those meetings as well, and being sort of plugged into that organization, if you like. And that was the thing that really, really helped me and enabled me to stay off the alcohol for a lot, you know, for then 21 years, okay, and just stay on the Diet Coke. Now, one of the big things then that came up for me, one of the big points of resistance for me, was social fear, really. The fear of what other people were going to think and how other people were going to react. And of course, when I say it like that, that's ridiculous, because that's people-pleasing, right? But that's part, perhaps, of the problem that I had, or part of something that I needed to work on in my own persona. But I was very concerned about, okay, so, and particularly in the case of dates, right? Think, well, okay, so I'm going out to the clubs, I'm meeting these women, we go on dates, and usually what you do on a date is drink. I mean, my date strategy back in the day used to be basically, well, I'll take her for some drinks, we'll both get hammered, and let's just see what happens. That was the strategy pretty much, and actually my strategy for meeting women in the first place was pretty much, well, I'll just go out tonight, I'll get really drunk, and let's hope, let's see what happens. And sometimes it would work, sometimes it would be successful. I mean, it's been said that is the British way, that people meet each other as they get drunk and bowl into each other at seedy nightclubs, and sometimes they get together, and that would work for me from time to time. But when I stopped drinking, then there was this sort of big problem mentally, because I thought, well, firstly, how am I going to ever meet a girl again, and secondly, what am I going to do on a date? My entire date strategy has just been blown out of the water by this. And actually, I did then end up slipping a few times going on dates with girls, because I remember one time I went out with one girl, and we went to have something to eat, and the waiter brought along some complimentary wine, and I thought, well, I can't turn this complimentary wine down. I'm just going to look like such a party pooper. So I drank with her that night, and it was, as I say, it was a real fear of mine of how I was going to handle those situations. Okay, now what then happened was that and this is not particularly advisable for anybody who decides to give up drinking and go into recovery or whatever. But how it was for me was that I actually ended up going out more. I ended up going to clubs and to bars and things actually more when I'd stopped alcohol than before, and I then started to become more successful in terms of my dating and meeting girls and meeting women. And the reason for that was firstly because I'd had a girlfriend for a chunk of the time when I was drinking, so that was one thing. But aside, even after that, by the end of my drinking, I was, as I say, very, very bad drinker. I'd be like slurring and falling all over the place and being sick and vomiting, this kind of thing. And so I wasn't a very attractive proposition as a drinker, even if I had some Dutch courage, as we call it, from the alcohol. When I stopped drinking and I was going to the clubs and I was sober, I was able to hold a rational, lucid conversation. Okay, I was sharp and I was on point in the way that other people in the club weren't. Okay, other guys weren't, and I was still looking, presentable and everything. I wasn't this dishevelled wreck that I'd been when I'd been drinking. So actually, my success with women at that point rose exponentially, and then the desire to date, the desire to meet different women, became a sort of replacement addiction, if you like, that went in the place of the alcohol that I'd stopped using. So as I say, myself and my friends, I forget the pseudonym I gave him before, I think it was Adam, but we would go out pretty much every night of the week. He was still drinking, I wasn't. I was drinking Red Bulls and things. But we go out pretty much every night of the week and try to meet as many different girls as we could. And as I say, my success in that endeavour was exponentially better than it had been before. And that was really how I ended up getting into this as a job, because that sort of addictive drive that I'd had that had led me to drink alcohol to excess was now leading me to date to excess, and to just throw myself into the whole social scene and really learn the ropes at the coalface of that, if that makes sense. So, and then since then, as I say, 21 years not drinking, and in that time, I've been to literally thousands of club nights and parties and bars and social situations of that kind, and I haven't picked up a drink. And of course, along the way, I've got into some fairly awkward situations occasionally. People asking me, well, are you not drinking? People trying to give me drinks, people trying to give me shots, all of this different kind of thing. But the way that I'd imagined it in my mind before as being this nightmare where I'd just be ostracized from society, that never came to pass. But by and large, most people most people don't really care that much what you're drinking, especially if you're at a club, right? Because the club is very busy. You're walking around. You might be holding. I mean, I wouldn't advise holding it in a wine glass, but you know, you're walking around. Say you're holding like a soda and lime, for example, in a glass. Nobody knows what that is, and for the most part, people aren't really going to ask because they're not that bothered. Do you know what I mean? So that side of things was okay. And then, of course, if you're meeting women in the daytime, in coffee shops and things, or if you're using the apps, and the apps didn't exist at that point, but now, obviously, online dating is de rigueur, drinking doesn't come into that at all. Then you've got the issue of, okay, what to do on a date. And that's quite a big topic, and maybe I need to do another video. So comments below if you want me to do a follow-up video talking specifically about dates. But in short, what I do on dates is pretty much the same as what I've always done, which is I'll take her for a couple of drinks. We'll go to a nice bar, we'll go to a nice lounge, we'll sit down, we'll sit next to each other if that's at all possible, if there's a sofa, or maybe just, you know, kind of at right angles around a table, and we'll have a conversation, okay? And she will drink whatever she wants to drink. If she wants to drink alcohol, that's absolutely fine. If she doesn't, that's cool as well. I don't care. I'm just going to drink a soft drink. Now, I'm not necessarily going to try and get into a big conversation with her up front about the fact that I'm not drinking. You know, it's not, I'm just going to play it down. If I get there first, I might order my drink first, so she doesn't, and often she won't even ask what I'm drinking anyway, so that's cool. Sometimes, increasingly these days, I front it up because I'm just like, look, I don't drink, this is why. And most of the time they accept that, they're not really that bothered. There are occasionally women who it is a big deal for. They're like, oh my God, why are you not drink? And all of this. And without wanting to take their inventory, the likelihood is that if a woman makes a big deal about it, it's probably because she has some unresolved issues of her own with alcohol. Okay, and for me, that's not really a woman that I'm going to want to date anyway. So it is what it is. You win some, you lose some. For the most part, though, they don't care. And I do sometimes do coffee dates. I'll sometimes do coffee dates, but I prefer to go to a nice bar, to be honest, because I don't drink alcohol, I still like the atmosphere of a nice lounge bar. That's my preference because I think it's a bit more romantic and sexy than going to a coffee bar in the daytime. But I'll do the occasional coffee date. What I don't tend to do is activity dates. You know, it's not a question of, well, just because I don't drink, right, let's go cycling around Hyde Park or let's go roller skating or anything like that. That's not my vibe because for me, I think the date should be about getting to know one another, okay, and seeing if you vibe. And for me, that's best done with the fewest complications possible, okay? So sitting across the table seems to me the most straightforward way that you can get to know her, okay? So that's my preference. And as I say, really the alcohol thing, in most cases, doesn't even come up. It's not even a problem, all right? So if you're watching this and you're thinking, well, I think maybe I shouldn't be drinking, but what am I gonna do on a date? I'm here to tell you, over 2 decades worth of experience of this, it's absolutely possible to date without drinking, and it's not a big deal, okay? And I think increasingly, as we go forward, it's going to become even less of a big deal because I think the drive towards people drinking less alcohol is going to become more prominent. You know, it wouldn't be surprising if we get to a point in the next decade or couple of decades where alcohol is frowned upon in the same way that tobacco is frowned upon and sugar is increasingly frowned upon. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. I mean, I can't say that with any certainty, but I definitely wouldn't be surprised. So I think things are a lot easier now than they were, and they will get increasingly easier because a lot of people are on a health kick anyway, you know? So, but yeah, I mean, look, don't worry about it. And look, here's the final thought, right, which is this. If you are somebody who shouldn't be drinking because it gets you into a lot of trouble, and if there are some women who don't want to date you or don't want to sleep with you because of that, well, to hell with them, because the most important thing is you look after yourself and you look after your own self-interest, and your self-interest is with not drinking. That should supersede your desire to, you know, have an affair with Stacey or whatever, right? It's as simple as that, really. So look, I hope this has been of interest. I hope this has been helpful. Do let me know your comments and experiences in the comments box below. If this is something you want to talk about, you can jump on a free call with me. There's a Calendly link below. You can get on a free call with me. We can have a chat about alcohol in relation to dating, or indeed any other part of your dating life. We can discuss. I do offer coaching, and if alcohol is of concern with you, then that's something I'm definitely qualified to talk about. But either way, even if you're not interested in the alcohol side of things, but you want to improve your dating life, then Calendly link below. Grab my collection of 11 books about the dating scene and the sexual marketplace and how to navigate it. It's called Renegade Dating Blueprint. The link is below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys again very soon. Bye-bye.